The notification pinged on my phone at exactly 3:47 a.m. Unknown thumbprint detected at front door. I stared at the glowing screen, my heart hammering against my ribs like a caged animal. Someone had just tried to unlock my apartment door with a fingerprint that wasn't mine, wasn't Mira's, and sure as hell wasn't authorized. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Owen Fletcher, and I'm a cyber counterintelligence analyst for Northpoint Security Solutions. Most people think that means I sit in a dark room eating pizza and hacking into foreign governments. The reality is far more mundane and infinitely more useful. I specialize in digital forensics, data recovery, and electronic surveillance systems. Skills that, as it turns out, are incredibly handy when your wife starts acting like a stranger. I rolled over in our king-sized bed, expecting to find Mira beside me, but her side was cold and empty. The bathroom light was off. Kitchen was dark. I grabbed my phone and checked the smart lock's activity log, scrolling through the digital breadcrumbs of our domestic life. 11:23 p.m. Mira Fletcher, door unlocked. 11:24 p.m. Mira Fletcher, door locked. 3:47 a.m. Unknown user, access denied. 3:47 a.m. Unknown user, access denied. 3:48 a.m. Mira Fletcher, door unlocked. My wife had left the apartment at 11:24 last night and returned just now at 3:48 a.m. with someone whose fingerprint was stored in my system as unknown. Someone who had tried twice to get into our home before Mira finally opened the door herself. I heard the front door close with its familiar soft click, followed by hushed voices in the hallway. Mira's laugh, that musical sound that had made me fall in love with her 4 years ago, drifted through the apartment, but it was different now. Intimate, secretive, the kind of laugh she used to save just for me. "Shh," I heard her whisper. "Owen's a light sleeper." A man's voice responded, too low for me to make out words, but the tone was clear enough. Familiar. Comfortable. This wasn't some random encounter or late-night emergency. This was routine. I lay perfectly still, listening to my marriage crumble in real time. Footsteps moved toward the kitchen, then stopped. The refrigerator opened and closed. Soft murmurs. Then, after what felt like an eternity but was probably only 10 minutes, I heard the front door open and close again. 3:59 a.m. Mira Fletcher, door unlocked. 4:00 a.m. Mira Fletcher, door locked. Mira slipped back into our bedroom like a shadow, moving with practiced silence. She'd done this before. Many times before. I kept my breathing steady and deep, feigning sleep while my mind raced through possibilities and probabilities, analyzing data points like the trained investigator I was. The shower ran for 15 minutes. When she finally slid back into bed, she smelled like expensive soap and someone else's cologne. "Owen?" she whispered. "You awake?" I didn't answer, couldn't answer, because if I opened my mouth, I might say something I'd regret. Or worse, something I wouldn't regret. The next morning, Mira was her usual self, bright, energetic, already dressed in her yoga instructor uniform of designer leggings and a fitted tank top that showed off the body she'd sculpted through years of dedicated practice. She moved around our kitchen like a dancer, preparing her usual breakfast of Greek yogurt and granola, while humming something that sounded suspiciously like a love song. "Morning, sleepyhead," she said, without looking at me. "You were gone to the world when I got home last night." I poured coffee into my favorite mug, a gift from our honeymoon in Vermont, and studied her face. Mira had always been beautiful, with sharp cheekbones and dark hair that she wore in a perpetual messy bun. But this morning, there was something different. A glow. A satisfaction that made my stomach turn. "What time did you get in?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Around midnight," she replied smoothly. "Clara and I went for drinks after the late class. You know how she gets when she's stressed about the studio finances. Clara Martinez was Mira's business partner in their yoga studio, Lotus Wellness. They'd opened it 2 years ago with a small business loan and big dreams. I'd supported the venture, even helped them set up their digital payment systems and social media presence. Now I wondered if I'd been funding my own betrayal. "Which bar?" I asked. Mira's hand paused for just a fraction of a second as she reached for her water bottle. "That new place on Elm Street, the one with the craft cocktails." I nodded and sipped my coffee, filing away another lie. The new place on Elm Street had been closed for renovations all week. I knew because I'd driven past it every day on my way to work. "I need to head out early today," Mira continued, slinging her yoga mat bag over her shoulder. "Leo wants to run through the new sequence before the morning classes." Leo. There it was. The name that had been lurking at the edges of our conversations for the past 3 months, ever since Mira had hired him as a guest instructor. Leo Brennan, with his perfectly sculpted abs and philosophy degree from some liberal arts college in Colorado. Leo, who specialized in tantric flow and had a waiting list of devoted female students. Leo, whose fingerprint had just tried to unlock my front door. "Leo's really dedicated," I said, "working so early." "He's passionate about the practice," Mira replied, and there was something in her voice, a defensiveness that confirmed what I already suspected. Not everyone understands that level of commitment. The dig was subtle but clear. Owen Fletcher, cyber analyst and weekend boxer, couldn't possibly understand the spiritual depths of yoga practice. Owen Fletcher, with his practical concerns about money and security systems, was too earthbound to appreciate true passion. "Right," I said. "Well, have fun with your practice." Mira kissed my cheek, a perfunctory gesture that felt like a business transaction, and headed for the door. "Don't wait up tonight. We're doing a workshop on partner poses that might run late." Partner poses. Jesus Christ. After she left, I sat in our kitchen and stared at my phone's security app. The smart lock system I'd installed 6 months ago had seemed like overkill at the time. Mira had called it paranoid and excessive. But the system stored biometric data for every authorized user and kept detailed logs of all access attempts. I pulled up the administrative interface and ran a search for the unknown fingerprint from last night. The system had captured a partial print, enough for identification if I could find a match. I exported the data and uploaded it to a law enforcement database I had access to through work. No hits in the criminal system, but that wasn't surprising. I needed a different approach. I grabbed my laptop and started digging into Leo Brennan's digital footprint. Social media profiles, business registrations, employment history. The man was an open book, posting daily updates about his yoga practice, his organic diet, and his philosophy on authentic living. His Instagram was a carefully curated collection of shirtless poses and inspirational quotes that made me want to punch something. But buried in the metadata of his photos, I found what I was looking for. Geolocation data showed he'd been at my apartment building multiple times over the past month, always late at night or early in the morning, always when I was supposedly asleep or away on business trips. I cross-referenced the timestamps with my smart lock logs and found the pattern. Every time Leo's phone had pinged the cell tower nearest my building, there had been unusual activity on my home security system. Late-night door openings, motion sensors triggered in the living room and kitchen, the guest bathroom being used. My wife was bringing her lover into our home, into our bed, and she'd been lying about it for months. I closed the laptop and walked to our bedroom, seeing it with new eyes. The sheets that Mira washed religiously every few days. The candles on the nightstand that I'd assumed were for ambiance. The new lingerie I'd found in her drawer and foolishly thought was for my benefit. My phone buzzed with a text from Jax Morrison, my best friend and boxing coach at Murphy's gym. "Sparring session tonight? You've been skipping too much lately." I stared at the message, then typed back, "Yeah, I need to hit something." Murphy's gym occupied the basement of a converted warehouse in the old industrial district, all exposed brick and flickering fluorescent lights. The air smelled like sweat, leather, and the dreams of fighters who'd never quite made it big. It was my sanctuary, the one place where problems could be solved with fists and footwork instead of keyboards and code. Jax was waiting for me at the heavy bag, wrapping his hands with practiced efficiency. At 31, he was 2 years older than me and built like a brick wall with anger management issues. He'd been a cop for 5 years before a corrupt partner and a department cover-up had soured him on law enforcement. Now he trained fighters and worked private security, making decent money, keeping rich people's problems quiet. "You look like hell," he said without preamble. "What's eating you?" I started wrapping my own hands, the familiar ritual helping to calm my racing thoughts. "Mira's cheating on me." Jax stopped mid-wrap. "You sure?" "Positive. I've got digital evidence, timestamps, the whole forensic package." "Shit." He finished his wraps and turned to face me fully. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to confront her, but another part wants to see how deep this goes first." "The investigator in you," Jax nodded. "Can't say I blame you. Better to have all the facts before you make your move." We worked the bags for an hour, my frustration translating into combinations that left the leather creaking on its chains. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut. Each punch was a question I wanted to ask Mira, each impact a lie I wanted to call out. "You know what pisses me off most?" I said during a water break. "She's been making me feel crazy for months, calling me paranoid when I asked about her schedule, acting like I was some jealous, controlling husband when I was just noticing that she was acting different." "Gaslighting," Jack said. "Classic cheater move. Make you doubt your own instincts so you stop asking questions." Well, it worked. I actually started believing I was being unreasonable. Started thinking maybe I was too suspicious, too analytical. Maybe normal husbands don't notice when their wives' routines change or when they start coming home at weird hours. "Normal husbands aren't married to liars." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. The messed up thing is, I still love her. Even knowing what I know, part of me wants to find a way to fix this. "That's not messed up. That's human. But Owen?" Jax fixed me with a look that had probably intimidated plenty of suspects during his cop days. "Don't let love make you stupid. If she's willing to cheat, if she's willing to lie to your face every day, then she's not the woman you fell in love with. That woman's gone." I drove home through the quiet streets of downtown, Jax's words echoing in my head. Our apartment building was a converted Victorian mansion in the historic district, divided into 6 units with original hardwood floors and modern amenities. Mira and I had the second-floor apartment with bay windows overlooking the tree-lined street. It had felt like home for 3 years. Now, it felt like a crime scene. Mrs. Hines was checking her mail in the lobby when I walked in. She was our 60-something neighbor from the first floor, a retired librarian with sharp eyes and sharper opinions about everyone's business. "Evening, Owen," she said with the tone of someone who had information to share. "Mira's been keeping some late hours lately." "Work's been busy at the studio," I replied carefully. "Mm-hmm." Mrs. Hines sorted through her mail with deliberate slowness. "That young man who's been visiting seems nice enough. Very polite when I ran into him in the hallway last week." "Young man?" "Tall fellow, long hair, very spiritual looking. He helped me carry my groceries upstairs when Mira was letting him in. Said he was a colleague of hers." "Right, Leo. That's the one. They seem to work very closely together." The way she said it made it clear that Mrs. Hines knew exactly what kind of work Mira and Leo were doing. The realization that our neighbors were aware of my wife's affair added a layer of humiliation I hadn't anticipated. "Well, have a good evening, Mrs. Hines." "You too, dear. And Owen? If you ever need to talk, I make excellent coffee." I climbed the stairs to our apartment, my mind reeling. How many people knew? How long had I been the oblivious husband, the last to know about his wife's betrayal? The thought made my skin crawl with embarrassment and rage. Mira was on the couch when I walked in, laptop balanced on her knees, typing rapidly. She looked up with a smile that I now recognized as performance art. "How was the gym?" "Good. Got some aggression out." "You've been tense lately," she said, returning her attention to the screen. "Maybe you should try yoga. I keep telling you it would help with stress." The irony was breathtaking. My wife was suggesting I take up the activity she was using as cover for her affair. I wondered if she'd recommend Leo as an instructor. "What are you working on?" I asked, settling into the armchair across from her. "Social media posts for the studio. We're launching a new workshop series next month." I watched her fingers fly across the keyboard, noting the slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Whatever she was typing, it wasn't business-related. The angle of the screen kept me from seeing the content, but her body language screamed personal correspondence. "Who's teaching the workshops?" "Leo's going to lead most of them. He has such a gift for connecting with students." "I bet he does. Sounds like he's becoming a pretty important part of the business." Mira's typing slowed slightly. "He's a valuable addition to our team. Clara and I are lucky to have found someone with his experience." Another lie. I'd researched Leo's background thoroughly that afternoon. His experience consisted of a 6-month teacher training program and 2 years of bouncing between studios in various college towns. He was hardly the seasoned professional Mira was making him out to be. "I'm going to take a shower," I said, standing up. "Okay, I'll probably be in bed by the time you're done. Early morning tomorrow." Of course there was. There was always an early morning, a late evening, a weekend workshop, the schedule of an affair disguised as professional dedication. In the bathroom, I stared at myself in the mirror. At 31, I was in the best shape of my life thanks to regular boxing training. I had a good job, a decent sense of humor, and I'd thought I was a good husband. I'd supported Mira's dreams, encouraged her business, and tried to be understanding when yoga became the center of her universe. Apparently, it hadn't been enough. I turned on the shower and let the hot water wash away the sweat from the gym, but it couldn't touch the cold anger that had settled in my chest. I was done being the oblivious husband. It was time to start gathering evidence. When I came out of the bathroom, Mira was already in bed, apparently asleep. But I noticed her phone was face down on the nightstand, and the charging cable wasn't plugged in. Unusual for someone who lived on social media and needed her phone fully charged for the next day's work. I slipped into bed quietly and waited. Sure enough, after about 20 minutes, Mira's breathing changed. She reached for her phone and began typing, the screen's glow barely visible under the covers. She was texting someone, and given the late hour and secretive behavior, I had a pretty good idea who. The next morning, Mira was gone before I woke up, leaving only a note on the kitchen counter. "Early class. Dinner with Clara tonight. Don't wait up. M." I made coffee and toast, then sat down with my laptop to do what I did best: investigate. If Mira wanted to play games, I'd show her what happened when you lied to someone who made a living uncovering the truth. I started with their business accounts. As Mira's husband, I had legitimate access to our joint checking account, which she used for business expenses. The transaction history told an interesting story: regular payments to Leo that were significantly higher than what they'd discussed paying a part-time instructor. Charges for hotel rooms during supposed yoga retreats that I'd never heard about. Restaurant bills for 2 at expensive places during times when Mira had claimed to be working late at the studio. But the most damning evidence was in the Venmo transactions. Mira had been sending Leo money regularly, small amounts with innocuous descriptions like lunch or gas money. But the frequency and timing painted a clear picture. These weren't business expenses. They were gifts. The kind of financial support that suggested a relationship far beyond professional collaboration. I screenshot everything and saved it to an encrypted folder, then moved on to social media. Mira's Instagram was public, part of her business marketing strategy, but Leo's was private. However, I noticed that several of Mira's recent posts featured locations and activities that aligned suspiciously with Leo's check-ins on other platforms. A photo of Mira at a coffee shop downtown, posted at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, coincided with Leo's Facebook check-in at the same location 15 minutes later. A picture of her dinner at an upscale restaurant was followed by Leo posting about amazing food with amazing company at the same establishment. They weren't even being careful. The arrogance of it was almost insulting. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your wife's yoga class is about to get very interesting. Lotus Wellness, 7 p.m. Come see for yourself. I stared at the message, my pulse quickening. Someone else knew about Mira's affair and wanted me to witness something. But what? And who was my anonymous informant? There was only one way to find out. Lotus Wellness occupied a converted warehouse space in the Arts District, all exposed beams and polished concrete floors. Mira and Clara had transformed it into a sanctuary of soft lighting, expensive sound equipment, and enough mirrors to make a narcissist weep with joy. I'd helped them move in 2 years ago, back when I was still the supportive husband who believed in their dream. Now I sat in my car across the street at 6:45 p.m., watching through the large windows as students filtered in for the evening class. I recognized several faces, women from the neighborhood, a few guys who'd probably been dragged along by girlfriends, and the usual collection of yoga devotees who treated their practice like a religion. At exactly 7 p.m., my phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. Check the side window. Second row from the back. I grabbed the small binoculars I kept in my glove compartment, a habit from my surveillance training, and focused on the indicated area. What I saw made my stomach drop into my shoes. Mira was demonstrating a partner pose with Leo, their bodies intertwined in a way that went far beyond instructional necessity. His hands lingered on her hips as he adjusted her position. She leaned into him with the kind of familiarity that spoke of intimate knowledge, and when she looked up at him, the expression on her face was one I remembered from our early dating days, pure adoration mixed with barely contained desire. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was watching the other students' reactions. Some looked uncomfortable. Others exchanged knowing glances. A few were openly smirking, clearly aware that they were witnessing something inappropriate. My wife was flaunting her affair in front of paying customers, and I was apparently the last person in the city to know about it. Enjoying the show? I spun around to find Clara Martinez standing beside my car, her arms crossed, and a satisfied smirk on her face. I rolled down the window, my heart hammering with adrenaline and embarrassment. Clara? I didn't see you come out? I've been watching you watch them for the past 10 minutes, she said. Pretty pathetic, don't you think? Excuse me? Sitting out here like some creepy stalker instead of just confronting your wife like a man. The casual cruelty in her voice was breathtaking. Clara had been to our apartment for dinner dozens of times. She'd laughed at my jokes, accepted my help with the business, and played the role of loyal friend. Now she was looking at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. How long have you known? I asked. Known what? Her innocent act was Oscar-worthy. About Mira and Leo. Clara's smirk widened. Oh, honey, everyone knows. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I'm going to end my marriage. Good. Mira deserves someone who appreciates her passion. Someone who understands what she needs. The words hit like physical blows. This wasn't just about Mira's betrayal anymore. This was about a conspiracy of people who decided I was the problem, the obstacle standing in the way of true love. You know what's funny? I said, my voice calm. I actually helped you set up the business banking system. I have access to all your financial records. Want to guess what I've been finding? Clara's smirk faltered slightly. What are you talking about? Unauthorized payments to Leo, personal expenses charged to the business account, tax irregularities that would make the IRS very interested in your operation. It was a bluff, mostly. I had found some questionable transactions, but nothing that would necessarily trigger an audit. But Clara didn't know that, and the sudden pallor in her face told me I'd hit a nerve. You're threatening me? I'm stating facts. But hey, I'm sure everything's perfectly legitimate. I'm just a paranoid husband, right? I rolled up the window and started the engine, leaving Clara standing on the sidewalk with her mouth hanging open. In the rearview mirror, I watched her pull out her phone and make a frantic call. By the time I got home, my own phone was buzzing with angry texts from Mira. Clara says you were spying on my class. This is exactly the kind of behavior that's been destroying our marriage. I can't believe you'd stoop to stalking me at work. We need to talk. Now. I poured myself a scotch and sat down to wait. Mira burst through the door 20 minutes later, her face flushed with righteous indignation. What the hell is wrong with you? She demanded. I could ask you the same question. Sitting outside my studio like some psycho ex-boyfriend, threatening Clara? This is insane, Owen. What's insane is my wife sleeping with her yoga instructor and thinking I wouldn't notice. The words hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. Mira's face went through a series of expressions: shock, denial, anger, and finally, resignation. I don't know what you think you saw. I know about Leo. I know about the late nights, the hotel charges, the money transfers. I know about the fingerprint on our smart lock and the lies about where you've been. Mira sank onto the couch, her anger deflating into something that looked almost like relief. How long have you known? Long enough. Owen, Don't you dare try to explain or justify this. You made a choice. Every day for months you chose to lie to me, to cheat on me, to make me feel crazy for noticing that something was wrong. Tears started flowing down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. The woman crying on my couch wasn't the person I'd married. That person had been replaced by a stranger who looked like my wife, but acted like a sociopath. I never meant for it to happen, she said. It just developed naturally. Leo understands me in ways that you never could. Because I'm not spiritual enough, not enlightened enough, not willing to pretend that adultery is some kind of higher calling? You don't understand what it's like to feel truly connected to someone, to find your soulmate. I laughed, a harsh sound that made her flinch. Your soulmate? Mira, you've known him for 3 months. I've known you for 4 years. We built a life together. We made promises to each other. Promises change. People grow apart. People choose to grow apart. This didn't just happen to you like some natural disaster. You made decisions. You chose him over me. Lies over truth. Selfishness over commitment. Mira wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders, and I watched her transform from guilty wife back into defiant cheater. You're right. I did choose, and I'd choose again. Good to know. I want a divorce. So do I. I'll be staying with Clara until we can figure out the logistics. Actually, you'll be staying with Leo. Clara's about to have her own problems. Mira frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means your business partner has been skimming money from the studio accounts to fund her lifestyle. It means she's been using the business credit card for personal expenses. And it means I'm going to make sure the IRS knows about it. You can't do that. Watch me. I stood up and walked to our bedroom, pulling a suitcase from the closet. You have 1 hour to pack whatever you need. After that, I'm changing the locks. This is my home too. Not anymore. You forfeited that right when you brought your boyfriend here. Mira followed me into the bedroom, her voice rising to a near shriek. You can't just kick me out. I have rights. You have the right to find somewhere else to live. Might I suggest Leo's place? Oh wait, he still lives with 2 roommates in a house that smells like patchouli and broken dreams. You bastard! Yeah, well, you made me one. I left her packing and went to the kitchen to make another drink. My hands were shaking slightly. Adrenaline, anger, and something that might have been grief. 4 years of my life were ending, and all I felt was a cold satisfaction that the truth was finally out in the open. My phone rang. Jax. How'd it go? She's moving out tonight. Jesus, you okay? I will be. But Jax, I need a favor. Name it. I'm about to become the villain in this story. Mira's going to paint me as the controlling, abusive husband who couldn't handle her finding true love. Clara's going to back her up. Leo's going to play the innocent victim who just happened to fall for an unhappily married woman. Sounds about right. What do you need? I need someone who believes my side of the story. Someone who knows I'm not the monster they're going to make me out to be. You got it, brother. But Owen? Yeah? Don't let them turn you into something you're not. Revenge is fine, but don't lose yourself in it. Too late for that, I thought as I hung up the phone. The Owen Fletcher who'd trusted his wife, who'd believed in love and commitment and working through problems together, that guy was gone. What was left was someone harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. Someone who knew how to use information as a weapon. Someone who was about to teach 3 cheaters what happened when you underestimated the wrong person. The villain they were about to create was going to be their worst nightmare. The divorce papers were filed on a Wednesday morning at the county courthouse, a mundane bureaucratic process that felt like loading bullets into a gun. I'd hired Patricia Patel, a lawyer with a reputation for being thorough, ruthless, and expensive. She was worth every penny. Your wife's attorney called, Patricia said as we reviewed the documents in her sterile office overlooking downtown. They want to discuss a settlement. What kind of settlement? 50-50 split of assets, including the apartment and your retirement accounts. She's also asking for spousal support while she builds her business. I laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Her business that she's been using as a front for her affair, the one where her partner has been embezzling funds. About that, Patricia leaned forward, her expression sharp with interest. How solid is your evidence regarding the financial irregularities? I slid a folder across her desk. Bank records, credit card statements, tax documents. Clara Martinez has been treating the business account like her personal piggy bank. Spa treatments, designer clothes, a weekend in Miami that she claimed was a yoga retreat, but was actually a vacation with her boyfriend. Patricia flipped through the documents, her eyebrows rising with each page. This is extensive. I'm very good at my job. Indeed. And your wife's relationship with this Leo person? Also documented. Hotel receipts, Venmo payments, digital communications, plus witness testimony from neighbors who've seen him coming and going from our apartment. Mr. Fletcher, I have to ask, how did you obtain some of this information? If there are any legal issues with your methods, everything was gathered legally. Joint accounts, public records, information freely shared on social media. I never hacked anything or violated anyone's privacy. I just paid attention to details that most people ignore. Patricia nodded approvingly. Good. Because we're going to need every advantage we can get. Your wife's attorney is Marcus Webb, and he's known for playing dirty. Marcus Webb. I'd heard the name before, a divorce lawyer who specialized in representing cheating spouses and somehow making them look like victims. He was expensive, which meant Mira had found someone to fund her legal defense, probably Leo or maybe Clara before she realized her own legal troubles were just beginning. Let them play dirty, I said. I've got documentation that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. That afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, Leo's voice came through the speaker, trying to sound calm and reasonable. Owen, this is Leo Brennan. I think we should talk. I don't have anything to say to you. Look, I know you're angry, and I understand why. But what happened between Mira and me, it wasn't planned. Sometimes people just connect on a deeper level. Stop. Just stop talking. I'm trying to explain. You're trying to justify sleeping with my wife. There's no explanation that makes that okay. Mira wasn't happy, Owen. She told me how controlling you were, how you made her feel trapped. Controlling? I could feel my pressure spiking. I supported her business. I helped her achieve her dreams. I gave her space to grow and explore her interests. How exactly was I controlling? The surveillance equipment, the constant questions about her schedule, making her feel like she couldn't have friends or spend time away from you. The revisionist history was breathtaking. I'd installed security systems because we lived in an urban area with property crime. I'd asked about her schedule because I was interested in her life and wanted to coordinate our time together. I'd encouraged her friendships and never complained about her spending time at the studio. But in Leo's version, or rather Mira's version as told to Leo, I was a paranoid, controlling husband who'd driven his wife into the arms of another man. You know what's funny? I said. You actually believe that bullshit. You've convinced yourself that you're the hero in this story, saving an oppressed woman from her terrible husband. I love her, Owen. You love the idea of her. You love the excitement of sneaking around, the thrill of taking something that belonged to someone else. But you don't know her. Not really. I know her better than you ever did. Really? Did she tell you about her eating disorder in college? About her anxiety attacks when she's stressed? About the fact that she's terrified of ending up like her mother who's been married 5 times? Silence on the other end of the line. Did she mention that she's been on antidepressants for 2 years? Or that she has panic attacks in crowded spaces? Did she tell you about her student loan debt? Or her credit card problems? Or the fact that she's never been faithful to anyone she's ever dated? You're lying. Am I? Ask her about David Chen, the guy she was seeing when we first met. She was still sleeping with him for the first 3 months of our relationship. Or ask her about the yoga instructor in Portland she had an affair with during our 2nd year of marriage. This isn't her first rodeo, Leo. You're just the latest in a pattern. I was stretching the truth about Portland. That had been an emotional affair that never became physical, as far as I knew. But Leo didn't need to know that. She loves me, he said, but his voice had lost its conviction. She loves the attention. She loves feeling desired and pursued. But when the novelty wears off, when you become familiar and predictable, she'll find someone new, someone more exciting, someone who makes her feel special again. You're just bitter. I'm experienced. I've been where you are, Leo. I've been the guy who thought he was different, who believed he could be the one to finally make her happy. But here's the thing about people who cheat. They don't do it because they're unhappy with their partner. They do it because they're unhappy with themselves. I hung up before he could respond. Let him chew on that for a while. That evening, I was at Murphy's gym working out my frustrations on the heavy bag when Jax approached with a grim expression. We need to talk, he said. I stopped punching and turned to face him. What's wrong? Your wife and her friends have been busy. They're spreading stories about you around town, saying you were abusive, controlling, maybe even violent. What kind of stories? That you threatened Clara, that you've been stalking Mira, that she was afraid to be alone with you toward the end of the marriage. I felt the familiar cold anger settling in my chest. Anyone believe it? Some people. You know how it is. Drama spreads faster than facts, and they're painting a pretty convincing picture of a woman who finally found the courage to leave her oppressive husband. Convincing because people want to believe it. It's a better story than selfish woman destroys marriage for yoga instructor. There's more, Jax said reluctantly. I heard from Danny Reeves that they're planning some kind of public event, a healing circle or some shit like that, where Mira talks about overcoming domestic abuse. Danny Reeves was a bartender at Murphy's who heard everything that happened in our small city. If he'd picked up rumors about a public event, it was already being planned. They want to make this a cause, I said. Turn Mira into a survivor, and me into the villain. Looks like it. I unwrapped my hands slowly, thinking through the implications. A public event meant media attention. It meant Mira's version of events becoming the official narrative. It meant my reputation, my career, and my future relationships would all be colored by the lie that I was an abusive husband. Jax, yeah? Remember what you said about not letting them turn me into something I'm not? I remember. I think it's too late for that. They've already decided who I am. Now I get to decide who I'm going to be. Owen. They want a villain? Fine. But they're going to learn the difference between being accused of something and actually doing it. I left the gym and drove home through the quiet streets, my mind already working through possibilities. Mira, Leo, and Clara had made a tactical error. They'd escalated from private betrayal to public warfare. They'd decided to destroy my reputation to protect their own. But they'd forgotten something important. I was a professional investigator with access to databases, surveillance equipment, and analytical tools that most people couldn't imagine. I'd been playing defense, reacting to their moves, trying to be the better person. That ended tonight. If they wanted to see what a controlling, obsessive, dangerous ex-husband looked like, I was happy to give them a demonstration. But it was going to be on my terms, using my skills, and with an outcome they'd never see coming. The gloves were off. Let the real games begin. The Healing Through Truth workshop was scheduled for Saturday evening at the community center downtown, promoted on social media as a safe space for survivors of emotional abuse to share their stories. Mira was listed as the featured speaker, with Clara as moderator, and Leo providing energetic support through guided meditation. The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. I spent the week preparing for what would be my final move in this chess game. Not just gathering evidence, I had plenty of that, but orchestrating a revelation that would expose all three of them simultaneously and permanently. The key was Mira's laptop. She'd left it behind when she moved out, claiming she only needed her tablet for basic business functions. What she didn't realize was that her laptop was still synced to the cloud storage account I'd set up for the yoga studio, which meant I had access to everything she'd been uploading for the past 6 months. Every photo, every document, every private message she'd thought was safely deleted. The treasure trove was beyond my wildest expectations. Screenshots of conversations with Clara about how to manage me during the divorce. Explicit photos sent to Leo during their affair. Text message threads with other yoga instructors gossiping about students and mocking their personal problems. But the crown jewel was a voice memo Mira had recorded for her therapist. A rambling 40-minute confession where she detailed her affairs, her manipulation tactics, and her plan to claim emotional abuse to gain sympathy and financial advantage in the divorce. "I know Owen never actually hurt me," she said in the recording, her voice clear and unmistakable. "But he was always so intense, so analytical about everything. It made me feel suffocated, you know. And if I frame it right, if I focus on how his behavior made me feel rather than what he actually did, people will understand why I had to find someone who appreciated me." She went on to describe her relationship with Leo as fun but temporary, and discussed her plans to move to California after the divorce was finalized. Leo, apparently, was not invited. The recording was dated 3 days before she'd moved out of our apartment. I made copies of everything, organized it into a comprehensive digital package, and prepared for the most satisfying presentation of my career. Saturday evening arrived with unseasonably warm weather and clear skies. Perfect conditions for a public execution. The community center was packed when I arrived at 7:30 p.m., 30 minutes after the event had started. I'd timed my entrance deliberately, wanting Mira to be fully committed to her performance before I pulled the rug out from under her. I slipped in through a side door and took a seat in the back row, noting the demographics of the crowd. Mostly women, mostly middle-aged, mostly the kind of people who shared inspirational quotes on Facebook and believed that everything happened for a reason. Mira's target audience. She was on stage in a simple black dress, looking vulnerable and brave as she spoke into a handheld microphone. Clara sat beside her with an expression of supportive concern, while Leo lurked at the edge of the stage like a spiritual bodyguard. And the hardest part, Mira was saying, was realizing that love shouldn't make you feel small, that a partner who truly cares about you doesn't monitor your every move or question your friendships. Murmurs of sympathy from the audience. A few people nodded knowingly. I thought I was going crazy, she continued. He made me doubt my own perceptions, my own feelings, classic gaslighting behavior that I didn't recognize until I found someone who helped me see the truth. She glanced at Leo, who gave her an encouraging smile. The audience ate it up. But I want everyone here to know that there is hope. There is life after emotional abuse. You can find your authentic self again, and you can find people who celebrate that authenticity instead of trying to control it. The applause was enthusiastic. Several people were wiping away tears. Mira had them completely convinced. Time to change the narrative. I stood up and started walking toward the stage, my footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet room. Conversations died as heads turned to track my movement. Mira's face went pale when she spotted me. "Owen," she said into the microphone, her voice shaking slightly. I didn't expect to see you here. I bet you didn't." I reached the front of the room and turned to face the audience, all of whom were staring at me with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility. I was the villain in their story, the abusive ex-husband who'd driven this poor woman into another man's arms. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, projecting my voice to reach the back of the room, "I want to thank you all for coming out tonight to support my wife. Sorry, my ex-wife. It's heartwarming to see so many people rally around a survivor." "Owen, please don't do this," Mira said, but her microphone picked up every word. "Do what? Tell the truth? Isn't that what tonight is supposed to be about? Healing through truth?" I pulled out my phone and connected it to the community center's Wi-Fi network, the same network that fed the projection system they'd been using to display inspirational quotes during Mira's presentation. See, I've been doing some healing of my own lately, and part of that process involved going through some old files, some forgotten recordings, some digital breadcrumbs that paint a very different picture of our marriage. The projection screen behind Mira flickered to life, displaying a folder titled The Real Truth. I clicked on the first file, a screenshot of text messages between Mira and Clara. "This is from 3 months ago," I announced as the messages appeared on screen. Mira texting Clara about how to handle Owen during the affair. The audience could read along as Mira described me as clueless but suspicious and discussed strategies for covering her tracks. Clara's responses included suggestions for gaslighting techniques and ways to make me doubt my own observations. "Owen, stop," Mira said, but her voice was barely a whisper. "Oh, we're just getting started." I clicked to the next file, photos that Mira had sent to Leo, including several taken in our bedroom while I was at work. The audience gasped, and several people looked away from the screen. "These were taken in the apartment we shared," I said, "the bed we slept in together. But according to tonight's narrative, I was the one violating boundaries." Clara stood up from her chair, her face flushed with anger. "This is harassment. You can't just—" "Actually, I can. Everything you're seeing came from devices and accounts that I legally had access to. No hacking required, just basic digital literacy." I clicked to the next file. Bank records showing the payments to Leo, the hotel charges, the business expenses that were actually funding the affair. And here's the financial cost of my wife's authentic self-discovery. Thousands of dollars from our joint accounts, used to wine and dine her yoga instructor, while she told me we needed to cut back on expenses. The audience was shifting uncomfortably now, their sympathetic murmurs replaced by confused whispers. This wasn't the story they'd come to hear. "But wait," I said, building to the crescendo. "There's more." I clicked on the audio file, Mira's therapy recording, Her voice filled the community center, clear and damning. I know Owen never actually hurt me, but he was always so intense, so analytical about everything. The silence in the room was deafening as Mira's recorded voice detailed her manipulation strategy, her fake abuse claims, and her plan to abandon Leo after the divorce was finalized. When the recording ended, I looked directly at my wife. She was crying now, but they weren't the tears of a survivor sharing her story. They were the tears of someone whose lies had been exposed in the most public way possible. "So there's your truth," I said to the stunned audience. "My wife cheated on me with her business partner's help, used our joint finances to fund the affair, and then planned to claim emotional abuse to gain sympathy and financial advantage in our divorce, all while her lover believed he was rescuing her from an oppressive marriage." I turned to Leo, who looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. "By the way, Leo, you might want to listen to the part of the recording where she discusses her post-divorce plans. Spoiler alert, they don't include you." "This is insane," Clara said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You're obsessed, Owen. This proves exactly what we've been saying about your controlling behavior." "Controlling?" I laughed. "Clara, would you like me to share the financial records showing how you've been embezzling from the yoga studio? Or should we skip straight to the tax documents that the IRS will find very interesting?" Clara's face went white. She grabbed her purse and headed for the exit, pushing through the crowd of confused attendees. "Wait," I called after her. "Don't you want to stay for the healing circle?" The community center was in chaos now. People were talking loudly, some demanding explanations, others heading for the doors. Mira sat frozen on stage, still holding the microphone, her carefully constructed narrative in ruins. Leo approached me, his face twisted with anger and humiliation. "You son of a bitch, you planned this whole thing. Guilty as charged. You've destroyed her. You've destroyed all of us." "No, Leo, you destroyed yourselves. I just documented the process." He took a swing at me, clumsy, telegraphed, the kind of punch that would have gotten him laughed out of Murphy's gym. I caught his wrist easily and twisted his arm behind his back using a restraint technique Jax had taught me years ago. "Here's the thing about yoga," I said quietly in his ear. "It's great for flexibility, but it doesn't teach you how to fight." I released him and stepped back. Leo stumbled away, rubbing his wrist and glaring at me with impotent rage. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced to what remained of the audience, "I apologize for disrupting your evening, but I hope you'll agree that the truth, however ugly, is better than a beautiful lie." I disconnected my phone from the projection system and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear Mira finally speaking into the microphone, her voice broken and desperate. "Please let me explain. It's not what it looks like. Owen he's..." But there was no explanation that could undo what the audience had seen and heard. No spin that could transform her from perpetrator back to victim. The recording of her own voice had sealed her fate more thoroughly than any evidence I could have presented. I stepped out into the cool evening air and pulled out my phone to call Jax. "How'd it go?" he answered on the first ring. "It's over." "All of it?" "All of it. Mira's reputation is destroyed. Clara's going to be dealing with tax fraud charges, and Leo just learned what happens when you believe a liar's version of her marriage." "Jesus, Owen, you really went scorched earth." "They started this war. I just finished it." I walked to my car and sat behind the wheel for a moment, processing what I'd just done. 3 lives ruined in the span of 30 minutes. Careers ended, relationships destroyed, reputations obliterated, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, no emotional response at all. Just the cold satisfaction of a job completed successfully. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "That was beautiful. You're my hero." Then another, "Holy shit. I can't believe she recorded herself planning the whole thing." And another, "Someone filmed the whole thing. It's already going viral." I started the engine and drove home through the quiet streets, leaving behind the wreckage of my marriage and the 3 people who'd thought they could outsmart a professional investigator. They'd wanted to make me the villain in their story, mission accomplished, but villains, as I'd learned, sometimes win. And winning, I discovered, was its own kind of justice.